Tonight we're honored to have Dean Jeff Seaman of the College of Environmental Life Sciences here to introduce David Orr. Jeff was actually an undergraduate at Oberlin, where Dr. Orr is teaching now. He received his bachelor's in biology at Oberlin, and then went on to get his PhD in biological sciences at Stanford. Jeff joined us July 1st. I know we were talking about dinner. I know he probably thinks he's been here a lot longer than July 1st, but he's been a great supporter of this program, and it's a pleasure to have him here tonight. Jeff.
Thank you, Rob. Well, it's a great privilege to be asked to provide an introduction in this year's Honors Colloquium. But before I do that, I also would like to personally commend all those people who have worked so very hard to make this wonderful, intellectually stimulating set of evenings possible, and particularly Deborah Grossman-Garber. First of all, Deb, why don't you stand up, please? Who is the College of the Environment and Life Sciences Director of Undergraduate Programs, and Professor Rob Thompson of the college's Department of Community Planning and Landscape Architecture. Rob, congratulations on your Dr. Judith Swift of URI's Department of Communication Studies, and I don't think Judith is here tonight. Soon. And Dr. Bill Wright, my illustrious predecessor as Dean of the College of the Environment and Life Sciences. I'm very proud that CELS is the primary organizer of this year's Honors Colloquium. And furthermore, I promise you that over the next few years, you'll hear a lot more about the research and education programs coming out of my college. Well, we are very honored to have as tonight's speaker Dr. David Orr, internationally known for his pioneering work on environmental literacy in higher education and in ecological design. Dr. Orr received his bachelor's degree from Westminster College, a master's from Michigan State, and a PhD in international relations from the University of Pennsylvania. He is currently chair of the Environmental Studies program at Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio. And Oberlin is one of this country's great undergraduate liberal arts institutions, not simply because I went there, although there has been some question regarding Oberlin's selection standards in 1973, when coincidentally I enrolled there, as well as questions concerning graduation standards in 1977, when they were finally able to declare me sufficiently educated to get rid of me. So I was thinking about this. The low point for both me and Oberlin was when I received a letter from some high campus authority that began, "You were observed riding a motorcycle into a college building." But seriously, although that was quite serious, it was Oberlin faculty like Dr. Orr who had a tremendous positive influence on shaping my future as a scientist and a citizen. The dean thing you can't blame on Oberlin. Well, Dr. Orr is an extremely distinguished scholar who has received numerous honors and awards, including the National Wildlife Federation's National Conservation Achievement Award, the Lyndhurst Prize, which recognizes the educational activities of individuals of exceptional talent, character, and moral vision, and the Bento Box Award from Clemson University for his work in environmental education. He's received a special citation from the Connecticut General Assembly. Not that we care anything about Connecticut here. But however, they did note Dr. Orr's vision, dedication, and personal passion in promoting the principles of sustainability. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, that's Cleveland's major newspaper for those of you who don't get to Cleveland very often, recently described him as, quote, "one of those who will shape your lives," unquote. Dr. Orr is the author of several highly regarded and influential books, including Ecological Literacy, in which he called on us to rethink and rebuild the educational systems of this country so that all students can become ecologically literate. He argued that by failing to include ecological perspectives in other subjects, we have taught students that ecology is unimportant for history, politics, economics, and indeed for society. Dr. Orr has not only challenged the traditional content and organization of education, but the unintelligent design of the buildings in which we teach as well. He raised funds for and spearheaded the successful effort at Oberlin to design and build the new state-of-the-art Lewis Environmental Studies Center. This building, designed by one of our previous speakers in the colloquium, William McDonough, demonstrates that it is possible to power buildings by concurrent sunlight, to create buildings that purify their own wastewater, and to build without compromising human and environmental health somewhere else or at some later time. It has been described by the New York Times as the most remarkable of a new generation of college buildings. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming a most remarkable man, a man with important and persuasive ideas for this and future generations, Dr. David Orr.
Jeff, thank you very much. Can all of you hear me in the back? Now, normally I do have a coat and tie, and it's out in somebody's trunk. I made the mistake of, or Rob made the mistake of saying, be comfortable, do whatever you want, so I'm here in sneakers and blue jeans. Just how I came in the airplane. But I do have a coat and tie if anybody would like to see it. Now, this talk tonight is going to be a little bit different than the talk would have been had it been given on September 10th. The events of September 11, I think, challenges in very fundamental ways. And the question before us, all of us as a movement, whether you're thinking about sustainable communities or ecological research or whatever it is in this movement, the challenge for us is what do we have to offer our time at this particular point in history? And so this is not a polished talk. It's going to be more like a work in progress or a seminar or some random thoughts about what we have to offer. I think we have a lot to offer. And I don't think we have begun to coalesce what it is we have to say to the world. And the stakes are high if we don't say this to the world, if we don't have something to offer. We as a movement aiming toward this thing called sustainability or ecological sanity or whatever you want to call it, will be a very small footnote in a very large history. We'll have lost a point or an opportunity at what is, I think, a teachable moment in our culture's history. And we'll have lost it forever. This is on my mind for a number of reasons. Back in mid-August, I was identified by a group of Republican businessmen who were asked to take a group of environmental people into the White House with them to talk about environmental policy, and they called and asked if I would go with them. I said, well, why me? And they said, well, you've been identified as a sane environmentalist. I've never been called anything worse in my life. My mother, who was a 93 years of age and a right-wing Republican, I called her right away to brag about this, as sons will do with mothers. Said, Mom, I've been identified by the Republicans as a sane environmentalist. There was a long pause the other end of the phone, and she said, well, honey, they just don't know you like I know. She's off my Christmas card. What a group of us were trying to do was to coalesce a series of views about environment to frame these for the White House. After 9/11, that effort changed dramatically, because now we had to include security as part of this. And the take-home message, Hunter Lovins and I drafted the document that amounted eventually to some 50 pages, and the take-home message was this, and it pertains to educational institutions. Issues of security, equity, environment, economy aren't separate issues. They're different facets of one issue. Now that requires a very different kind of perspective on how we see the world. That's an educational message. The take-home soundbite for the White House people was security by design. If you intend to power the country by nuclear reactors, you've compounded your security issues and your economic issues and your environmental issues dramatically. Every one of those reactors is a potential target for a terrorist, or for an act of God, or for simple human error. But these are not separate issues, they are different parts of one issue. And that one issue has to do with the conduct of the public business and environment. Now, the background message, I want to show some slides tonight. But the background message here for all of us in education and for students included is, what do we need to do relative to these kinds of issues for the future? And I think there are two major tasks for educators and for universities like yours and colleges like mine. And that is very simply to equip students intellectually to connect the dots, to see patterns and systems. One of the great systems educators in the country, Danella Meadows, died, unfortunately, at the age of 59 this past spring. But Dana's message to us through writings and speeches and private counseling and so forth, Dana's message was to see the world as systems. There are no accidents in the world in a certain systems view. There are simply different outcomes caused by playing out the rules of the game. And so intellectually, what we have to do at Oakland College and University of Rhode Island is to begin to equip students to connect dots, to see patterns, see the connections between ecology and economics and security and equity and welfare and all of these kinds of things. And then the second thing I think we need to do is to equip you to do the great work of your time, which is to remake the human presence on Earth in ways that are genuinely sustainable, beautiful, lovely, fair, and work over the long haul. So that's what I want to talk about. Now, I've gone through, what I'd like to do is to show some slides that illustrate what I think we have to offer the world at this time. And to begin to coalesce a case for environmental presence, environmental management, an environmental seat at the table. And if we don't do this, I think we'll simply make ourselves irrelevant. And what I fear, as many of you may fear in this room, is that over time, as we respond to the events of September 11th, the idea of making a response that is equitable and fair and sustainable simply will not be considered. That eventually we'll see the world descend in a kind of a pit of conflict and action-reaction cycles. So there's a lot at stake. And I think we need to be a voice of sanity and reason. Now, that voice, one final thing I'd like to say at the beginning, that voice is caught between, Jane? No, I'm waiting for a second. To try to position this dialogue, I think that we're caught between two different kinds of fundamentalisms. That of Osama bin Laden is easy to see. Blows up buildings and terrorism and so forth, that's easy to see. But on the other side, there is the fundamentalism of the global economy, this juggernaut that says all change for all people all the time, no matter what. And Osama bin Laden and fundamentalists on the other side say no change for anybody at any time, and we, the Taliban or whoever, will determine how things work. Two fundamentalisms. And you and I are caught somewhere in the middle. And we can see the one kind of fundamentalism, it's a lot harder to see the other kind. But I think history, in time, will record that the juggernaut of the market economy, as we now conceive, is as much fundamentalism as that of Osama bin Laden, but perhaps worse in many, many ways. So what do we as environmentalists have to offer? If I can begin here, if I do this correctly, let me begin with this. One of the things, if I step away from this mic, can you all hear me?
No.
If I flip on this mic, then this ought to work, right? Excuse me just 1 second. Okay, that is on now.
Yeah, that's okay.
I can hear you now.
And you can hear me okay.
Oh, yeah.
We hope there's no cross resonance here with this one, so I'll put that down here. All right. Here's one of the things I think we have to offer the world. Is that too loud?
No.
It's not. This is supposed to filter out nonsense also, so the quality of all right, here's one thing we have to offer the world, and it's how the world works as a physical system. This is, you all know the laws of entropy. This is how the world works, even though Congress can't do much about this. The flow of low entropy goes through wells, mines, forests, and farms, this side to all those sinks for waste and so forth, the atmosphere, dumps, and all that. The laws of thermodynamics tell us very easy. This is Orr's version of thermodynamics, so the people who teach physics, pardon me. But the laws of thermodynamics say that what comes in this side comes out this side. And there'll be a short little residence time for products like Stradivarius violins and things like we make out of wood and so forth, but entropy goes in only one direction. What comes in goes out, and this flow goes this way. So the first two laws of thermodynamics tell us something really important here. And from the laws of thermodynamics, the growth economy is simply an absurdity. So the faster you speed the flow of low entropy here, the faster you create disorder. And that's simply built into it. Now, as public policy, what that does is give us a couple of choices. And this is something I think we need to make very clear regarding the events of 9/11. The laws of entropy tell us that we have four choices. How to power that flow, whether from renewable or non-renewable sources. Now, this is important because we decided to be, or we have to be, involved in Middle Eastern conflicts because of our dependence on non-renewable fuels. It's not by choice, it's by necessity. Now, that's one issue. Secondly, the volume of flow and the rate of flow through that pipeline. I guess the combination of those two things is what we call gross national product. But we've chosen to have very high volume flow through that economic pipeline at a very rapid rate. So the idea behind the growth economy is to speed the creation of disorder from low entropy to high entropy. And then the length of flow, wherever you ate tonight, on average, your food traveled about 1,500 miles where it was grown or produced to where it was consumed by you. And that is very typical now. The global economy involves tentacles that stretch out all over the planet. Now think about this in the context of 9/11. Because every one of those supply lines is now vulnerable. We have to guard them all. This, if we choose to power the whole thing by non-renewable sources of energy, and I refer you to the President's energy plan created by Dick Cheney and a group of people whose names we don't know. That whole energy plan requires speeding up the use of non-renewable sources of energy, coal, oil, natural gas. Now, you and I know the world works differently. Here's one thing we have to offer. And in that world, this is a description of carrying capacity in the old form given once by Paul Ehrlich, IPAC, or impacts for population times affluence times technology. The technology, as you heard from Avery Lovins and Bill McDonough, is a variable of sorts. We can work for us or against us, but there's a more complicated calculation here of carrying capacity. But this is just to say that as environmentalists, we know some things about how the world works that are being overlooked. The U.S. military is the largest purchaser of fossil fuels in the world, and now a large part of its mission is to protect our access to resources and fossil fuels, and it's a mission that they can't win. It's not a mission that is a happy one in any way at all. But the real equation is population times stuff per person times the throughput of resources to maintain, pardon my spelling here, maintain the stuff, and the energy per unit of throughput, and so forth. Environmental damage per unit. This is a complicated calculation. But we have something to offer the world, it seems to me, in how the world works, and how it doesn't work. And so that's one lesson. There's a second. This arrived in my wife's mail on September 11th. And I thought this was kind of good. This is, of course, New York City. World Trade Tower is not here in the picture. That's not them right there, but they would be off here someplace. But I like this because what it portrays is something about equity and fairness and decency in the world. Buy now, pay nothing. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And what we know about equity, I think, as environmentalists, is that it's not working out very well. And around the world, largely or partly because of the global economy, the way it works, the way it causes advantages and disadvantages, there are about 250 million children that are essentially classified as either sex slaves or work virtually as slaves for global corporations. 250 million. That is virtually the population of the United States. Now, if we think that we can build a workable, sustainable world in a world that exploits its children, not a few children, 250 million, that is simply nonsense. That is an absurdity. Now, there are reasons for this. And if you go back and look at tax laws, it simply portrays the differential income distribution patterns here over the course of post-World War II era. we have systematically disadvantaged people in the middle class and below. We had to invent a word called underclass to describe how bad things were below the middle class level. Not just poor, there's now an underclass. Worldwide, there are about 800 million people for whom there is no productive work whatsoever. Now, this world won't work. And it won't work partly because of the bottoms falling out. And then the red line, this is taken from the recent issue of Scientific American, the red line here depicts billionaires and the income of billionaires. This is you and me, probably. The income distribution is widening. Class war was declared in this country 20 years ago. We have yet to come to grips with it. If we talk about sustainability,